So if you're interested in getting a professional headshot while you are here that you can use for all your conferences and seminars, please quickly go over there during the tea break or at any free time to take a professional headshot. Thank you.
Okay, sorry, apologies for that. So I said walks into the radiotherapy unit, we create the patient's account on the area, then we book the patient for simulation afterwards. On typical day when the patient comes in, depending on whether the patient will need a contrast or no contrast, we'll simulate the patient and afterwards do the contouring. The treatment plan is done afterwards, and we do the treatment plan review. So basically, this takes us about 2 weeks to do this, so that immediately after 2 weeks, the patient gets a call and comes in for treatment. So, picture of our CT. The next slide. Okay, so here is a picture of our CT scanner. Is the somatome scope from Siemens.
5 minutes more.
So basically, we do the simulation. The simulation is the same as the treatment setup. Next slide. Then the contouring is done. Next slide. Then treatment planning is just an interface, an example of the interface. So treatment plan is basically for you to do the beam arrangements, energy selections, field size, and all that. Then you decide which technique best suits what you want to achieve. You can do the 3D, MRT, VMAT, and all that. Next slide. So that is like a typical example of what the three-dimensional radiotherapy is all about. You can do 4-box and all the next slide, please. And then the IMRT. So with this, with the machine, we're able to do IMRT now, unlike when we had the old machine. As I said, we have the Millennium 120 MLC. Next slide, please. And then the VMAT, which gives room for more conformality of the beams. We also, because we have the vital beam, we're able to do both coplanar and non-coplanar plans. Next slide, please. Okay, this is just a typical example of the treatment review that we do. So we have clinical goals that we need to achieve. We have a template that have already been done with the clinical team, the doctors, physicists, and all that. So we are able to meet our clinical goals now, unlike when we didn't have this machine. Next slide, please. Okay, so after the treatment plan is done, we do the treatment plan QA, and here is a typical example of the template and the tolerance that we use. Next slide, please. Okay, so we have the imagers, the onboard imagers on our new machine, and we have the capability to do the KVCT. Usually we do this for the first fraction, and every first day of the week that the patient presents, we're able to do the KVCT, and subsequently we do either the KV, MV, for the other days. Next slide. Okay, so the treatment delivery, we do this 5 times in a week. So our operations run from Tuesday to Saturday because of the sit-at-homes that we usually have on Mondays. Next slide, please. Next slide. Next slide. So basically the management and communication is important, and quality as well. So we try as much as possible to keep that in mind in all that we do. So we do the chat QAs every day, every week. The doctors have their own to do, the physicists have their own, and the therapists have their own. So we checkmate each other. Next slide, please. Okay, just a typical example of some of the immobilization devices and the applicators that we have. Next slide. Okay. Question and answer. Thank you very much.
Let's give him a round of applause. Thank you very much. I don't know if there are any questions. One. Any other question? Two. So we'll take questions. Just hold on a bit.
Thank you. Please, why is it taking you 2 weeks to do the planning? I mean, in this age, the tumor is not waiting for you. Please. Because I'm a bit disturbed, that 2 weeks.
The second question.
Okay, thank you. My question is that during the course of the presentation, you made mention of techniques, IMRT, VMAT. Are you actually doing them at your center? And again, are you taking care of all the organs in the body, or for now, you have a specific organ you are taking in your center? Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Please kindly respond.
Okay, thank you. The first question is about the time for planning. So it's not every patient or every case that takes 2 weeks. So the ones that are emergencies, we take them quickly, but there are some, because our center, we have many patients coming in, and sometimes you find out that the process gets a bit stretch or suffer a bit because of the time to decide on some issues, and also to sorry. Okay. No. As I said, this is the worst case scenario that we've had so far. 2 weeks. It doesn't exceed 2 weeks maximum, and some of those patients are called in. Then the question about whether we treat, I didn't get the question very well, but I heard you say IMRT and VMAT. So yes, we do this. We have the capability to do both 3D CRT, IMRT, and VMAT for all sites. We don't. We are not limited by the number of sites that we treat because of the machine that we have now. So we treat all sites.
Thank you very much. Please, let's give him a round of applause as he makes his way. We'd like to quickly welcome Mr. Tim Clark, or is it Dr. Tim Clark right now, who's presenting on Alcyon. Yes, you're welcome.
This one. Good morning, everyone. Just wait for my slides to come up. While I wait for that, I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Tim Clark, and I head up the marketing organization with Varian, responsible for the EMEA region. It's certainly a pleasure to be here. I'd like to thank the organizers for the opportunity to present this morning. And so I'm going to present on Halcyon, which is our ring-based delivery system and a new standard in efficiency. Next slide, please. So this is data from the Lancet Oncology report a number of years ago now. I'm sure you're all very familiar with this. But what this highlighted was not just a gap in resource in terms of equipment and technology, but also around human resource. So the question is, how do we address these challenges? Us as manufacturers, as vendors, one of the things that we can focus on is workflow and efficiency to help with that staff shortage. Next slide. So these are the things that we focus on in our products, in our portfolio, particularly around Halcyon. Quality, simplicity, efficiency, and automation. Next slide. So with any delivery system, of course, couple of the fundamental principles around high quality radiotherapy is maximizing dose and optimizing the dose to the target, and delivering that on target and minimizing dose to normal surrounding tissues. Kind of fundamentals of radiotherapy, really, and certainly a guiding principle in any of our delivery systems. Next slide. So we want high quality therapy. Of course, patient safety is paramount and super important. We never forget that. But when we designed Halcyon, and we released Halcyon in about 2017, when we designed Halcyon, we wanted to focus on different things which perhaps hadn't been a priority before. Things like operational efficiency, capital efficiency, the patient experience, which is often forgotten by manufacturers, and also staff satisfaction. So we brought these other design principles in to help with those resource challenges that we talked about at the beginning. Next slide. Okay, so this is an old version and the slides are not quite working. But there are three guiding principles that flash before your eyes there. Things like getting on target, being on target, also the patient experience, as I mentioned. These are some of the technologies that support that. So it's a 6MV LINAC. There is a MV panel and a KV panel. That's important because every treatment on Halcyon is image guided. It's either IMRT or IGRT. So we're always checking before delivering that we're delivering in the right place, which is super important. The system is water cooled. It can be cooled from city waters, so there's not necessarily the need for a chiller, which adds efficiencies, which I'll talk about later. There's an integrated beam stopper, which gives advantages around room shielding. And again, I'll talk about what that brings in practical terms. And then the system uses a dual layer MLC. This is a unique design, a new feature of the Halcyon, which we introduced. Next slide. So here we can see the MLC. And I don't know how well it's showing on the slides, but you can see maybe underneath the second layer. So there are two layers, they're on top of one another, and they're staggered. And we can see that on, when we go on in a moment, how that kind of looks in a diagrammatic format. But what it means in terms of leaf transmission, it means that we're only 0.01%, so we minimize that interleaf leakage. This design also gives us optimization potentials that doesn't exist with a conventional MLC. What this means in terms of treatment planning is that we're able to produce high quality treatment plans. We put that to a test when we were developing the system, and some of you may be familiar with some of the international planning competitions that take place online. And we looked at the results and we looked at the challenges in those treatment planning competitions, and we tried to replicate those plans. So we kind of entered the competition, if you like, offline. And we were able to match the winning results for all the different treatment cases, either match the results of the winner or exceed the results. So with this dual layer MLC and with Halcyon design, we're able to achieve high quality treatment plans. Next slide. And next slide. And the next. Thank you. So here you can see the schematic of that MLC. We can see how the leaves are shifted over. So the leaf width is 1 centimeter, but with the overlap, we're able to achieve a resolution of 5 millimeters. Next slide. I talked about imaging being important, and we have high quality cone beam CBCT. This has high quality tissue definition. It uses a scatter reduction technique called Curos, which we also use in treatment planning. But with that, we can get, as I say, high quality images, and we can acquire those in 17 seconds for a high or large field of view that you could see on the slide there. Just as a side note, we've also just released a product or a capability called HyperSight. And HyperSight allows us to further improve this image quality on either Halcyon or on our adaptive platform, which is Ethos. And with HyperSight, we're able to get extremely high quality cone beam CT. In fact, the quality of HyperSight is very, very close, in fact, almost indistinguishable from diagnostic CT quality. The other thing with HyperSight is that we can acquire images in just 6 seconds. So it offers up the possibility of breath hold CT. So you can easily hold your breath. Most patients can hold their breath for 6 seconds, so we can do breath hold. We can see the simplicity that I talked about before and the patient-focused features. The system has a large bore, so it's not claustrophobic for the patient. The machine is very quiet. If you go in a treatment room, it's very noticeable how quiet it is. The couch goes down to a low height. It's easy for a patient to access the couch. They're on the treatment couch for a short time. All the motions are very smooth, and there is lighting, ambient lighting in the back of the machine to help with the patient experience. Next slide. Next slide. Thank you. We'll wait for the slides to see where you go. There is an in-room touch monitor, and this facilitates very easy operation. So there's 9 steps to initiate a patient. Okay. So this facilitates very easy workflow for the operators. There's simply 9 steps to work through the treatment initiation and delivery. Next slide. So there are monitors on the back of the machine or the end of the machine that visualize the patient throughout the treatment. Next slide. You can also see lasers on the next slide integrated in the machine, so you don't have to mount lasers separately on the side walls. And then there's an intercom built into the machine, again, so you can communicate with the patient to enhance the experience. Next slide. Next slide. The machine has a very small footprint. You can see the dimensions of the machine there. And so it can go into some very small bunkers. It can actually be put into old cobalt bunkers, for example. The small footprint also has other advantages. Next slide. So we can see here the comparison between a bunker designed for 15 MV, a typical C-arm 6 MV, and a Halcyon machine. So you can see there schematically the reduction in the room requirements. And this has advantages that we can see on this slide. Your vault is much smaller, and if the vault is smaller, you're using less concrete. You can see a 35% reduction in concrete used for a Halcyon bunker. Next slide. If you use less concrete, your construction costs go down, your room's smaller, your construction costs go down, and you can see we can achieve a 55% reduction in cost for construction of a Halcyon bunker. The Halcyon is also designed to be efficient. You can see, or maybe you could have seen on the previous slide, the reduction in electrical consumption. There's also a reduction in water consumption as well. One of the other aspects was around the uptime. Uptime is super important, and if you saw the previous slide, you would have seen that we designed the Halcyon with a 98% uptime in mind. We've actually achieved something like a 95% uptime capability on the Halcyon. So a very reliable product. You can see Halcyon is very flexible. And if this slide stays up long enough, you'll be able to see that you can treat up to, or we have treated on Halcyon, up to 27 different disease sites, ranging from head, neck, pelvis, breast. It really is a very versatile workhorse. The other thing about Halcyon is its efficiency, its throughput, and you can see that on average between 80 and 100 patients are treated per day on the Halcyons that we have installed. We're actually able to monitor the Halcyons that we have installed, so this is real data that we're picking up from our users across the globe. And that efficiency is again reflected in the actual time from door to door. So this is not beam on time, this is not setup time, this is everything. This is patient entering the bunker and leaving the bunker, and you can see that patients are being treated on average within an 8-minute window. Next slide, which I think is my final slide. So that's Halcyon. Halcyon is designed for around operational excellence. It's high throughput. It's installed across the globe. It's installed, we have them in Europe, we have them in US, we have them throughout the world, as I say, in a lot of different settings. It really is a very flexible product. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attention and very happy to take any questions.
So thank you very much, Tim Clark. I think you deserve a round of applause for keeping to time. I think you actually finished right before time. So thank you so much. We appreciate that. So do we have any questions? We know Halcyon is not new to us. So we have a question from Prof. Olasinde, or a comment. So any other question or comment, suggestions?
Not a question, since there's no question. Mine is a comment. Arcon president, I believe she's in the room. Please, this is my own appeal. I have no conflict of interest to declare. But if this kind of machine, please, if they are presenting it to us, Halcyon is very simple and very cheap machine for us to use in some of these bunkers that are lying waste in the country today. So please, instead of us just listening to them here, because I don't know if the Federal Ministry of Health officials are here, so that, I mean, they can discuss. Enough of all this just coming to hear about this here. But let us have action, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the comment.
So thank you very much for your presentation. Now, Halcyon seems a little bit simple. Is there a way that we can make it to work with the solar power? Because that is our challenge here. Because if we could be able to design either a solar system that can work with it, because of the unsteady energy situations and the high costs as well, I think that is something that variants should look at. Thank you.
Really good point. So I've been in radiotherapy for like 30 years, and probably there was talk about a solar-powered LINAC back then at the beginning, right? But back then we didn't think we'd be driving around in electric cars either. So it is something that has a lot of potential. I know there are some people working on this, but nobody's quite there yet. It probably requires a further development in solar panel technology before we could get to that point. But I think that's where the development is rather than on the LINAC side. Certainly Halcyon helps though. It's one step closer. Just to comment on the Halcyons in the country, there are 2 installed currently and more to follow shortly, I think. Not sure if I'm done. Thank you.
So ladies and gentlemen, the next session will be looking at how we can expand research and work a lot more in that region, in that area. So to take that, who will be handling that, the presentations are presenters from Marcel Roots Cancer Center, Prof. Alatshe, I know he's around, and the third presenter would be Professor Wong. So could we have you here up front? So Dr. Modupe Elebote, could we have you here? Professor Alatshe? Yes, sir. Professor Wong? Okay. So can we have so can we have the slides up for Marcel Ruth. So, Dr. Elebute, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Good morning. There are three microphones here. Which one? Pardon? Yes. Do you want me to? This is the one I'm using, right? You can hear me? Yes. Good morning. Thank you very much to the organizers for... Pardon? Okay. For asking me to come and contribute to this year's Arcon, which, as all of us know, has been quite innovative, as a lot of things are being done, and in particular to do with technology in this world, this new world of AI. So thank you for asking me to come and talk about the work that we've been doing over the last almost 3 years. Marcel Ruth will be operational 3 years in November, and so I'm very pleased that we're able to come and contribute the data that we've managed to gather, which I hope sets the scene for the rest of the session in terms of how we can now scale up in Nigeria, doing work, doing research with accurate data. And if I want to sort of give you the background to this, and I do think about it sometimes, how we took this risk or made this step in this field, coming to set up this comprehensive cancer center, because when we were trying to do this, my husband and I, we went all over the place trying to find data. How many cancer patients are there in the country? Where are they? Who's treating them? What is it like in the public sector compared to the private sector? What are the challenges, and so on? And in general, it was very difficult to find any data. Either it was very recent, or it was a long time ago, and nobody could actually speak to the accuracy of the data. So I think this is our opportunity in the country to start to collect very accurate data, which will set the scene for us improving clinical care. We're talking about, and we have now got the opportunity to have very expensive infrastructure, including radiotherapy machines, much needed in the country. There's no doubt about that. And other opportunities for diagnostics and immunohistochemistry and so on. But without the background data to help us with this work, it's going to remain a difficult problem. So what is the status of cancer care in Nigeria at the moment? Why Marcel Ruth? What was our vision? What are we trying to do? And the work that we've been doing more recently in trying to actually establish a standalone research arm of Marcel Ruth, which I'll describe to you in a short while. So obviously we've heard this throughout the last 48 hours or so. Cancer remains a huge issue in the country. There's no doubt about that. And accounting for more deaths than even during COVID and all the worry that we had, and how much sort of mortality from COVID was in everybody's mind and in everybody's face. But actually, when you think about it, cancer has caused more deaths, even in that COVID era, and continues to do so now. In Nigeria, at the moment, we're talking about HPV and cervical cancers. There's such an issue in terms of the cancer cases, and breast cancer in particular in our hands remains quite an aggressive disease. Next slide, please. So Marcel Ruth, we came into the, started the hospital in 2021, end of 2020, but really became operational, particularly with our radiotherapy in April 2021. The vision was to create a comprehensive center, one in which every aspect of both diagnostics and treating the patients could happen in the one place. And the reason for that was that I had sort of obviously some experience in terms of private healthcare in Nigeria, and as well as in the public arena. I went to medical school in Lagos. I obviously left in 1986, but over the years, although I was practicing in the UK, I had collaborations with and did some work with both the university teaching hospital and in the private sector. And one of the things that struck me particularly was how a patient had a diagnosis made in one place by the doctor, then to have the confirmatory tests to actually say this was what was going on and what they had to do next. Simple things sometimes like blood tests, as imaging, they had to go to a different place to get that done. And then obviously when it came to treatment, they might now be referred to somebody somewhere completely different. The whole thing was disconnected. When you look at primary health care and secondary health care, yes, it's inconvenient, okay? But when it comes to cancer care, it increases the anxiety in the patient and their relatives. It lengthens the time. The point Professor Olasinde was trying to make to the previous speaker, why would a patient wait for 2 weeks for their planning to be done? Why would a patient wait for how many days? In cancer, once you've told somebody they've got cancer, the days, the hours are of the essence. So one of the things that we actually now proudly state at Marcel Ruth when we get a new patient is, give us 48 hours. In 48 hours, we will be able to, and if we can't, it's not because we haven't tried enough, we will be able to tell you what we think is going on, probably be on the way to confirming it. I mean, histology takes a while, but we would have done all the imaging, everything, all the tests, we'll have all the results, and we'll be able to sit down with you and your family and begin to design a treatment plan. And that's just, and even that 48 hours is huge from a patient's life, waiting to find out what's going on with them and facing their mortality. So patient-centered care in one site and in a center that's designed to what we think promotes healing, because it's light, it's bright, it's got color, I've got some pictures, run by skilled professionals who have the patient's interest at the center of everything we do. And we're very, very fortunate because we have a whole array of very recent, new state-of-the-art equipment. So any of you who haven't visited, there is a video on our website to fully describe what we do. Next slide. Thank you. And just a few pretty pictures, because we've been talking so much science, so much, in terms of, all the data and so on. This is our day unit. Marcel Ruth, because people keep asking me, was named after my mother-in-law, who died from complications of breast cancer. Purple was her favorite color. So our day unit is filled with purple. Next slide, please. We have a separate chemotherapy pharmacy. I thought it was important to mention this. And in fact, in the last 2 years, we've been able to accommodate oncology pharmacy training at the site, run by a number of NGOs, including one from the US. I think it's very important, and I think it gives our patients the confidence that the drugs that we're administering are the right ones and actually being delivered in the right sort of sterile way, not just for them, but for the our female pharmacists who are providing the care. We've got 2 modular theaters named in memory of my father, who was a professor of cardiovascular, cardiothoracic surgery, and the provost of the medical school that I attended later on. And where I'm extremely proud now, because actually the surgery was the last point that we came into what we should be doing. And I have to say that I thank Mrs. Claire Omashe for continuing to say, you need this theater space, and you don't just need one theater, you need 2. We probably only use the second one from time to time, but I can now see what you were trying to say, and I will publicly state that. Because actually, in the last 6 months or so, I think we've done about 60 to 70 procedures. We're doing neurosurgery. We've done 3 pineal gland tumor resections using minimal invasive techniques. We're doing mastectomies almost every day. We're doing GI surgery. Professor Latishe is doing ERCPs at Marcel Ruth. It has, I would never have thought about it, but it's been incredible to be able to, as I say, all that care in one place, from chemotherapy to the surgery, and of course, to radiotherapy. We're using the TrueBeam machine that was also installed in May 2021. Next slide, please. So that's the the sort of vision and the infrastructure, bringing sort of high tech and innovative as well, because we have a mammogram, which is one of the state-of-the-art 3D mammograms. We've got our own fully fledged laboratory. We do almost all our laboratory work in the hospital, including tumor markers, including virology. It's only really histology and IHC that we have to send away. So we're led by a very senior team, including Dr. Damola Omogbeyin, who trained in UCH Ibadan and went to Howard, and I think knows one or two of the very senior oncologists here, and he remains our head of radiation oncology. But if you want to, in practical sense, Damola looks at every single plan, because we have software with him in DC, and signs every single plan that is done in the hospital before they're released. So that's the level of competence and skill that we bring. And obviously from a nursing point of view and from admin, where we have very, very skilled healthcare professionals who've been doing this for many, many years. Next slide, please. We've grown significantly. We now have about 70 staff, of which about 50 are clinical. And people always ask me why I feel that we need to be so heavy on the clinical side. And the next slide, I think, will explain that. There's a lot of noise next door. And we are consultant-led, both in the solid tumor oncology space. Dr. Popola will be presenting one of our abstracts later on today. I've spoken about Dr. Omogbeyin, and we have a new recent appointment in Dr. Adeyinka, who was a senior registrar from UCH, who came to do a 2-month period of training before she took her exams, and she's now joined our team. I've got a co-hematologist, Dr. Akiumi, who works with me. Family medicine, general medicine, and palliative care is central to a lot of what we do. We heard about that yesterday, introducing palliative care right at the beginning of the patient's journey. We have a full-time consultant with us looking after our patients and sorting out the palliative care point of view. We've got 3 full-time pharmacists running our chemotherapy systems. Next slide. We've run a tumor board from April 2021, and we have not missed one single week. We discuss every single patient. On this Thursday, we have 12 patients that we're going to be discussing, and on average, we're discussing between 8 to 12 new patients every week. If COVID didn't teach us anything, we could do a lot of things virtually. I'm very, very grateful. I always say that. Apart from those of us in the building, as I described on the slide before, we're also joined by the general surgeon, the urologist, the intervention radiologist, the histopathologist, the radiologist, and in addition, about 6 oncologists, 2 from the UK, 2 from the US, and 1 from Toronto, who join us every single Thursday at 4 p.m. to discuss every single new patient, or patients that we have to bring back if there have been secondary problems. So that's the level of the scrutiny of care and the planning and the following of international guidelines that our patients get. Next slide, please. So data is very important. And I think for the rest of the talk, basically I think my message is, yes, it's important that we do the more micro data, the genomics, the looking at all the sort of sequencing issues that might play a part and might help pharma design the drugs that we need for our own ethnic backgrounds and not be relying on that data from the Caucasian population. But I think the message I want to get across this morning is that even what we think is simple data, collecting the number of patients you're looking after, what they've got, where they are in their treatment, what their outcomes are. Dr. Grover's talk yesterday, looking at the practice in Botswana, I think already lends itself to what I'm saying this morning. Doing that accurately, and that's something we can do in the teaching hospitals, and we can collaborate. Yes, we're luckier because our patient numbers are smaller, and because maybe we can respond quicker because we have the infrastructure. But to be honest, if we can collect that data accurately. How many cancer patients are we treating in the country? Where are they? What have they got? That in itself will help to guide public sector decisions about where these cancer centers should be and how we should treat these patients. Coming back to home, in under 3 years, we have seen almost 3,000 patients at Marcel Ruth. Even I am stunned when I look at that information. Okay, we know that the majority of the patients come from the Southwest, but the one other thing I will say is that we have patients coming from all over the country. I've now had to learn where Adamawa is and so on, and how long it takes our patients to get to us for care. We now have patients coming back from the UK, from the US, because now the dollar is against us and care is very expensive. But like all the other data that we have, Globocon and so on, breast, prostate, and cancer remain the top 3 diagnoses in our hands. Next slide, please. The services we provide, again, this has been alluded to throughout the last 48 hours, but education, awareness, and health screening remain the center of where we should be and where, to make sure that we are making sure that patients are presenting at earlier stages when we can do something about it. So we have a very big ethos on annual health screening, and we're sort of BUPA accredited for that. So that forms about 10 to 12% of what we do. We get a lot of general medical referrals. We're an oncology center, but we're also a specialist hospital. But radiation, so medical oncology and radiation oncology accounts for about 60% of what we're doing. Next slide, please. And so this slide is just to take you through a patient's journey, and I'm not going to read through it. The message basically is that a patient can walk in, like there's a lady who had a mastectomy yesterday, the bilateral mastectomy, who came to one of our awareness days last October. In fact, she'd had a mammo done in the UK 6 months before and told her everything was fine. So I said to her, so why did you come? She said, well, my friends were all coming. We went out for lunch, and they said, oh, there's this awareness day at this hospital, which is really nice. So she came with them. In fact, when she got there, the list was already full because we were going to screen, I think it was about 150 women. And she said she was actually a bit irritated because she thought she was going to get it for free. But because she was there, she said, okay, well, how much is it anyway? And they said it was 20,000 or something. So she decided to pay and have her mammogram. And lo and behold, she had a lesion. Biopsy, immunohistochemistry, all confirmed that it was an infiltrating duct carcinoma. And she subsequently had her neoadjuvant therapy. She was having her bilateral mastectomy. This is a different patient from on the side, but I'm just trying to describe. And will go on to have her radiotherapy, all at Marcel Ruth. She hasn't had to go to one other hospital for anything else. Blood tests, diagnostics, CT, everything done in one place. And the beauty of that is they get to know the team get to know them, the support, the counseling, everything done in one place really improves the patient's journey. Now, looking at the almost 3,000 patients that we've looked after, I've told you that breast, prostate, colorectal, the highest. We've also seen, you see, this data is beautiful because it doesn't lie. So, for example, we have seen 3% of our patients have had lung cancers. Something that we don't talk about, something that we don't think is important, but actually they were all female. So 4 female patients in a 3-year period with lung cancer. Why? So that's what the data helps you start to think about. Why? Why would you have non-smoking women who do not live with smokers, who do not work in an industry where they're exposed to things that would predispose them to? Why are we getting lung cancers in Nigeria? That's what accurate data helps you to do. I'm not going to go on about the hematology side of it here so that you don't kick me off the stage. This is Arcon. Next slide, please. And then just looking at the ages. So if you're a lady in the room, if you're almost 60 like me, then you begin to think, oh my goodness, I might have a problem when you look at that bar chart and the pie chart. So females in their mid-50s seem to be the highest number of patients. Next slide, please. Okay. We see pediatric cases. I was saying to Dr. Joseph, when I was referred my first pediatric case, I did say, oh gosh, I don't do pediatrics. And the doctor who referred the patient to me said, you have no choice. We have a problem in this country. We see quite a lot of pediatric cases, a lot of them acute leukemias and lymphomas, but also some solid tumor patients too. Radiotherapy cases, we've done, again, most of them are for curative intent. Next slide, please. This abstract, I think, is going to be presented later today, but it's just to say about the numbers of surgery that we're doing and the request by our patients to have bilateral rather than the mastectomy on the side of the surgery because of the anxiety, the fear of having to come back to the table in the future. So I think this is something that, again, having the data brings it to our mind and helps us start to think, why are these women opting to have bilateral mastectomy? And I don't want to steal the thunder of the person who's presenting the abstract, but these were not even people who were BRCA positive. The one thing that made me start to think we really need to, and we installed our electronic medical records about 6 months after we started Marcel Ruth, but what we've done now is we've gone back to day one. So we have absolutely 100% accurate data of every single patient that we've seen and will be seeing going forward. And this slide was what made me start to think we have to do this. In our hands, the percentage of positive family history of cancer is about 30%, which is a worry for me. The background worldwide is about 5 to 10%. And the interesting thing also is that people always think, do people actually know that family members have cancer? Actually, they do. And it's not about socioeconomic levels, because we actually have patients from a wide range of, although we're a private sector, but people have people who will sponsor them or establishments that pay for their care. But when you're clocking your patients, and I actually do a proper family tree, they will tell you, yes, my father had prostate cancer. My mother's brother died of colorectal cancer. From the north, I've seen families where 4 or 5 people have died from colorectal cancer. And nobody ever did the H. pylori test in those families. So these are the kind of things that we need to start thinking about. So we've invested in a -80-degree freezer, and we have local ethics. Professor Ketiku chairs our ethics committee. We collect blood and saliva from all patients who will give us consent, and we use our patients who are coming for the annual wellness check as our normal controls. So again, but with very comprehensive consent being given, we are now at almost 300-400 samples in the freezer. We're partnering with a small biotech company called Yamachi, who are based out of Accra, a group of highly intelligent and very committed scientists, all PhDs. And Yao's wife is a molecular biologist, so they also are setting up their lab, and they will be running the tests on the groups of patients that we're going to be looking at. Next slide, please. Next slide. And also we're setting up a software with them, which we've called Uvosio, where all this cancer registry, basically, which is what we're trying to develop, is being run in that setting. And it also speaks to another software called Vial. So all the patients who have samples in the freezer will be able to automatically identify them. And then if we did any studies on them later on, again, we'll be able to pull all the data without having to go back to it. So our big data for breast cancer, I just wanted to focus on that for 2 seconds, is that we've seen almost 500 breast cancer patients at Marcel Ruth. The majority of them are triple negative. So we can already tell you that. Next slide, please. And what we're doing with Yamachi, and hopefully we'll be able to present this, maybe not at Aortic, but at ASCO, is that we're now going to be doing the genomic studies on the patients whose samples we've collected in that group of triple negative breast cancer. We've also just been approved to run a clinical trial for one of the big pharma companies in triple negative breast cancer patients. I'm extremely proud of that. I feel that within 5 years to be in a position, because they've seen, thank you, because they've seen how accurate and how regimented we are in collecting this data, we already have people who trust us because the need to do these clinical trials in our patients, in our part of the world, to inform pharma and us on the clinical side what we should be doing next, as was presented yesterday, that 10-year Botswana experience. I'm hoping that in 10 years' time, Dr. Grover and I will be able to have dinner again like we did last night to discuss what the challenges are in trying to turn this data into your decision, for example, in the country to reduce the age of patients who should be screened for cervical cancer. That's the kind of information we'll be able to get out of this. I think you've missed one slide. I'll be done in 1 sec. And yes, this is the other slide, because even sometimes we get a bit disheartened. We sort of think, oh my gosh, all our patients are just, we're not doing very much. They're all just dying on us. Again, that's where data helps you. Now we put our data together. We found that actually, in our early stage cancer patients, only 2 of them, and we've got, have actually, there's only a 2% mortality rate. So the majority of the patients who pass away are late stage. And so that also gives you the confidence that actually you're doing the right thing for the patients who come early. But it also tells all of us in the room, yes, we can bring infrastructure, we can bring labs, we can bring machines, and we need them, don't get me wrong. But every single person in this room has to take this message back to themselves, their family members. I say it's your birthday present to yourself. Your annual wellness check is what is going to save all of us in the short term, until we develop all this other data that's going to inform research. But picking up anything at an early stage is the key right now. Next slide, please. And I'm not going to summarize all that because I think I've said it all ahead, and I'm looking forward to listening to the research that's already and the collaboration that's already going on. But I think that data is key. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for keeping to time. Dr. Elebute just presented data and equity, the role of the private sector. So, Dr. Elebute, there's one thing I want to say, and I'm sure that your mother-in-law would be proud. We are proud. I mean, the data coming from Master Roots, wow, it's good. So we are proud of you, ma. So, yes, so we have one question in the front. Do we have any questions, comments, contributions? So, yes, could you introduce yourself?
Thank you very much. This is very impressive work and incredible to see state-of-the-art quality treatment being delivered right here. So it's a comment and a question. The first one is, you have great data coming out. Are you already planning to look at, since you have follow-up data on these patients, looking at the outcomes as well as some of the costs, what the costs are to the patient, out-of-pocket cost, and what are the, really thinking about cost modeling, what are we paying and what are we getting out of it in terms of outcomes and quality? Because that data, I think, would be really critical to then work with the government, because I don't know how patients are funding this. Are there medical aids, or it's all out of pocket, or is there a way to actually establish PPPs, and provide some of this costing data to the government to say, this is what we're getting, and sort of come up with a model that would be workable and sustainable?
No, that's honestly, it's a huge, it's a very good question. It's a huge question for, I think, all of us in the room. And I think that, you could talk about this for an hour or so, but I'm going to make just 2 points. And one is the majority of our patients pay out of pocket. That's the situation in the country. That's the first thing. The other thing is that we are actually there's a lot of, impression that, in the private sector, care is actually much more expensive. But there's some data that's come out, and I think one is even from Professor Alatishe's team, that will show you that even in the public sector, because patients have to pay for all these things, otherwise they're not going to get the results. They're not going to get the IHC done, because it's not done in the teaching hospitals and so on. So even in that setting, I think there was a pediatric paper where the cost of to the pediatric case, I think it was leukemias, is about 6 billion naira, which the patients and their families have to pay themselves. The other side of it is that there's this sort of impression that we are much more expensive than everything else, and we're putting together some data from the private sector radiotherapy centers in the country. The public sector one, I think, has just been published. And what I can say here quite is that radiotherapy doesn't cost more than the radiotherapy in the teaching hospitals in the country. So it makes, there's this disparity and this feeling that, oh, the private sector is so much more. And it brings to your point the fact that private-public partnerships need to be in place. We already have the infrastructure, we have the capacity, we have the room to treat patients, even in the public sector, which is what is being done in the UK. In the UK, Genesis Care, which is the private sector radiotherapy center, because I spent time there, the majority of what they do is reducing the waiting times for the national health care patients. So, and that, as you say, then brings the cost modeling down, because the private sector has the infrastructure, can run, and if they have a contract that says they will have the numbers of patients, they can bring their costs down as well. So yes, absolutely right. Yes, thank you for that.
I have one more question, ma'am. So it's impressive that you are doing triple-negative breast cancer clinical trial in your center. So 2023 ASCO, there was a lot of talk about clinical trial diversity. And now the FDA has made strong statements supporting clinical trial diversity, especially underrepresented patients. What we have seen is that we have not seen a lot of Black patients represented in our clinical trials. And the future is going to be that clinical trials is going to come to Africa. Question for you. Yeah. Now that you want to do clinical trials in your center, how plugged are you as far as IRB and scientific review, making sure that the clinical trials that are being conducted in your center are well vetted? And I ask this question to say that in the future, there will be a perversion whereby all pharma, all scientific, everybody wants to do trial in Africa. Yes. How prepared are you for conducting clinical trials in your center?
Very good question. And actually, I think
Dr.
Grover referred to it yesterday. And we're in the private sector, by the way, just saying that, just putting out there. But we have made the commitment because, for me, it's an opportunity that would be wasted. So we have done a lot of work. We actually have a separate R&D team that now being led by somebody who is a CRO, has CRO experience. So we've actually made that commitment to set up this team who are going to, so we're going to get our IRB soon. We have our local ethics. We're working to get national ethics as well. And on our ethics committee, we have oncologists from the US, from Canada, I think one from South Africa, but we also have the legal, the ethics person, and so on and so forth. But we're doing it properly, is what I'm trying to say to you. It takes a lot of work. It takes the commitment, because I could say, well, I'm only here to look after patients and make profit for the business. I keep being reminded, by the way, by my board, that when we started here, there was no conversation about research, clinical trials. There was no conversation about training. But I'm very proud to say that, we're taking senior residents from UCH, and we're going to now start taking senior residents from JOS as well to not, we are not accredited to train, but just to give them the experience that they need in terms of this capacity building. So yes, I totally, and I think this is where we will all fall down. If we don't do it properly in the beginning, it will all fall down. We have to do it properly, absolutely. Yeah.
Good morning, and thank you very much for your presentation. Okay. In fact, I must commend Master Ruth for what you're doing. We've seen a lot of it, and I must say it's quite impressive.
Thank you.
My question one is, in the past 5-6 years, we've had the private sector becoming so active, in the Nigeria oncology space. We've seen it with Master Ruth, Calabar. Now we are seeing more PPs, like you see with Lutz and Enugu. It's helped a lot. There were times we had in this country just one machine, just one. Other times, none. It happened and it was so bad, but thank God those are past things, and now we are making progress. My question is, what would you want to say to the other private centers who are also going to be involved in offering care to patients and may just be looking at probably is business and let's make profit? Of course, there will be, no doubt about that. How best would they go about ensuring that data becomes part of their service in oncology space? Apart from that, too, recently we have the NICRAT, which has been established by the federal government, and we expect that to bridge the research and treatment gaps we've had over time in the National Cancer Control Program, which, according to Professor Ezome, actually ended last year. So that's for that. Then another question to you is, we've always had data, that's the truth, though they are insufficient and we could do more with it. But now the question is, we have data, cancer registries in Benin, Calabar, Lagos, other centers. But the problem has been coordination. You know, there's no central coordination. That's a very big gap. So I'm thinking with more coordination, we're able to bring out research that will justify more investment by the government in oncology. So how best do you think we can go about that? And what would you say to upcoming private facilities that want to also do research and to emphasize, I know there will be profit, it's business, I know, but they should balance it up. Make your money, then do more research and from data. Thank you very much.
Thank you. No, it's a really, really good comment. And I'm going to answer your last question comment first, because that goes to what Dr. Ibrahim just said, which is that, and I know that these registries exist. In fact, I traveled all over the country when I first came back. I went to the Ministry of Health in Abuja. I went everywhere to go and look at these registries, to look at this data. And you've already answered the question. They're collected, you know, some years, not some years, and that's what the point Dr. Ibrahim was making. If it's not accurate from day one, it's almost like you didn't bother collecting any data, right? That's the problem. So when it comes to private sector in terms of doing research, well, I will tell you, I mean, I'm sure it's the same definitely the same in the UK, it's probably the same in the US. You're always going to have your champions, people who are passionate. I mean, Professor Latishe in OAU with a busy surgical practice and other professors here, but the people who are passionate about it are the ones who are going to have to do it. So doing it in the private sector, yes, it's not your reason for being, but when we understand the issues of cancer care in Nigeria, where we want to be, all of us in this room, that's why we're here for 24, 48, 72 hours, you know, and we have the, you know, great minds, people who have the infrastructure, we have people we have the equipment in the country. We just need them to be paid for so they can be installed, as I think that Professor Lasinde just said. You know, we talked, Professor Chinegwanda yesterday was saying 6 years of wanting to introduce low-dose brachytherapy in the country and still nothing. We cannot give up. We can't afford to give up. When I listen to stories of Nigerian patients who have sat in India, South Africa for over a year, who've had to relocate their whole families to go and get care, we have no choice. We have to do this. We have to do it well. And we have to do it well from the beginning so that this data will inform the research that the clinicians can use, that the government can use to inform policy. We're very grateful that now Minister of Health is somebody who comes from a public sector background, so hopefully we won't have to tell that story too well or too much. When you're asking me about centers, I do think the country needs more centers. There's no doubt about that. What the data that we're collecting now might do is help to inform strategically where these centers should be. Nowhere in the UK, they've gone from services everywhere to streamlining services, because otherwise the country will never be able to afford it. So the country needs maybe 3, 4 comprehensive cancer centers, but are going to be well equipped with good specialists and deliver the care. And then they will provide the support for your secondary care hospitals to be able to make the diagnosis quickly and then refer those patients in. When you come to cost modeling, it's the only thing that's going to work. If we all want to set up a cancer center in every state, in every place, it's not going to happen. It's not going to work. The capital to do it is too high, and we're never going to, the country will never get the return on investment, and the patients will never be able to afford it because it's too expensive. I hope that answers your question. Okay, thank you so much. I think I've delayed everybody now. Thank you very much for this opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. The next presenter would be Professor Olusegun Alasise. This is someone who is dear to us all. He's dear to me. Prof. Alasise is a professor of surgery at the Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, and he's also the co-founder of the African Research Group for Oncology. Prof, would like to say we appreciate you for encouraging us, radiation oncologists. We know a lot of us have benefited from Arcon. I myself, I know, have benefited from you. He was instrumental to the PPCR sponsorship that we had. And even presently, as we speak, one of us is a recipient of the Nigerian Cancer Research Training, which, Arcon made that possible. We also know that one of us, Dr. Folorunsho Shaw, is having his training in medical oncology. All this we know is because of the efforts of Prof. Alasise. Thank you so much. So, sir, you have 20 minutes to present the role of partnership and collaboration in promoting equity in practice and research. The floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much. I want to thank the executive of Arcon and all the leadership of Arcon for deeming it wit to invite me to this meeting. And of course, I'm also organizing a meeting in about 12 days' time. It was so difficult to spare the time to come until I heard the topic. And that topic was the magnet that made me to come here. Everything I've done that probably I've achieved has come as a result of collaboration. And the take-home message I want us to learn from this is that we all need to learn more about collaboration, and let's see how to move it forward. Next slide. I have no conflict of interest. Next slide. You can see that I have a lot in my mind to say. I was thinking I would talk for 30 minutes, now 20 minutes. Let me see how I can rush through as many as I can within a short time. Next slide. I will start with this quote that says that we live in a world where collaboration is no longer a luxury. And this is very, very true. It's now a necessity. If you want to be an excellent academia or excellent clinician, then collaboration is a necessity. So let's go to the basics. What is collaboration? Collaboration is essentially can be defined as two or more individuals coming together and meaningfully contributing towards a common research goal. And what it does is that it helps us to take advantage of the strengths of individual partners to conduct research that would not have been possible if we have one individual doing that. And I have a lot of story behind it. It gives you opportunity to benefit from the knowledge, the information, the skill, and the expertise of other people. We wanted to apply for FISA grant, and we were looking at how do we get a mobile mammo to be able to do a community grant. And one of our collaborators said, oh, I read somewhere that 2 mobile mammo was donated to Nigeria. And that was how we got it. And eventually we applied for the grant, and we got the grant. So there's a saying that when you have a mentor, you ride on the shoulder of giants. I would say that if you have a collaboration, you ride on multiple giants. You are riding on the shoulder of multiple giants. And I can tell stories about what we have experienced having collaboration to that, but time will not allow me. What are the characteristics of research collaboration? It can take different forms based on size. And of course, you can have few people collaborating and doing research together, and this can extend to a larger network, independent academics across the world. Of course, it can actually be a short time or a long time collaboration. Next slide. Yeah, it can vary based on geographic. All of us, we are a lot academic in the room. It can be north to south collaboration or global south collaboration, meaning collaboration between low-middle income country and another low-middle income country. It could be vertical, meaning that it can be within the discipline. Like if all the Arcon members decide to collaborate with Dr. Elebute that we are interested in your data, we all want to start collating all our breast cancer together. So it can be interdisciplinary and can be interdiscipline. And that's what we call horizontal collaboration. It can actually be presential, meaning that everybody staying in one room discussing the research together, or it could be virtual, and that's something that we have learned with COVID. There are several types of collaboration which can range from private to public partnership, can be within private partnership between a non-governmental organization with non-profit organization. It can be between multiple academic. Next slide. But one thing is that we know when you are talking about types of collaboration, it can be an informal. And I can believe that almost everybody here has been in one collaboration or the other. But most of it are actually informal. When you wanted to do your analysis and you look for somebody in the epi group and say, please, I try to do it, I'm not getting it, that's a form of collaboration. But the one that will actually attract more grant to us are the formal collaboration. They are often, this helps us to attract more grant and more funding to do work. But another important collaboration is collaboration with industries. There are nuances that you will never know until you partner with an industry. Whatever intellectual property you develop, you may not know how to market it until you have somebody in that field. If you talk to GNC High, we want to do something, they will tell you which state in the country will be able to afford this that you are bringing around, because they've been working. So there are nuances that industry know better than we in the academics, and all of us must do as much as possible to collaborate with them. Then we could have meta collaboration, meaning that collaborators or a network are collaborating with another network. As if, an example is if CAPTC working in prostate cancer, joining with colorectal cancer group, AGO, and forming a network. We tried to do that, which didn't work at some time, but we are still at it. As a researcher, you must identify individuals and groups that are essential to your academic success, and consciously look for efforts and opportunity, look for opportunity to collaborate with them. Why do researchers collaborate? A study was done in US, and they put all the researchers together, about 100 of them, and they were asking, why do you think we need to collaborate? And a list of reasons were given. I won't dwell on that. I will just go to the next slide. On benefit of research collaboration. One, research collaboration give you opportunity to have academic success, successful academic career. And if anybody think I've been successful, it's not because my father has oil money that is funding my research. It's all because I have partners that I'm working with that is supply that, and we are applying for grant to be able to do the research that I love. Not even they, that I love to actually work with. And I will talk about that. It helps to expand the breadth of your research. It makes research fun. If you've never seen fun in research, try and dwell and join, collaborate, and be in a collaboration. You see that it makes it a fun. It allows you to collect, analyze more data. Imagine in this house, if about 100 of us that are seeing breast cancer decide to team up today and said all our breast cancer cases come into a particular forum. In the next 1 year, we'll have over 2,000. And you can write papers that will make an impact. So collaboration helps you to collect and analyze more data. It gives you insights through data sharing, giving feedback, and receiving a consensus with a diverse group of people. It expands your network of potential future collaborators. Currently, I'm working with HiHack on some research. And why did they come to us? They came to us because they know what we have done. It's everybody. We just got an R01 early this year, And it was because people in John Hopkins said, oh, these people are successful. Why can't we partner together? And lo and behold, we applied for the grant last year. This rest is the story. We have the grant. It expands your network of people that you can work with. It reduces the challenges associated with research and development, and it can help to commercialize research. One thing I know that in developed country, when you are involved in research, you earn more than those that are in the clinical practice. But it seems to be the reverse in Nigeria. If you are in research, you are actually likely going to be poorer. And it's because we have not learned to market our research. And that's something that all of us have to learn and work actively about. It allows you to have access to people's mind. Yesterday, we were talking about a grant we are preparing. Somebody was giving an idea. I said, oh, we can do it this way. It gives you opportunity to know how people reason and how you can help. And that can actually widen your horizon. There are other benefits. If you want to if you look at practice-changing papers that have been published, hardly will you see any coming from one institution. They're actually coming from collaboration. So it's a lot beneficial, and it's something we should all think about. Next slide. So, but as beneficial as it is, it also has its challenges, because assuming that we have people from sociology in our midst, and we are talking about cancers and we are talking about brachytherapy, even as a surgeon working in cancer space, immediately you start talking of some special types of radiotherapy machine. I'm lost. So communication could be a barrier because people don't understand your own jargon when it comes to your field. And you must look for ways by which you communicate with them effectively. There could be misappropriation of ideas and misinterpretation of data. And Professor Lebute mentioned something now. If you look at your patient and you are collaborating with somebody from Johns Hopkins University, where 80% of your patient died in a year, and over there, 90% of their patient died, somebody can misinterpret it and say you are not doing a good job without looking at context. So when you are sharing data, context is very important, and this has to be declared right from the beginning. Of course, it increased administrative work. I have to reply to, I spend 2 hours every day of my time to reply to mail alone, aside from doing other things. So if you want to be in a collaboration, be prepared for work and be prepared to spare the time. Agreeing on credit and sharing credit could be challenging, but all this can actually be overcome. There are other challenges that I've listed. Taking care of the junior colleague in a research collaboration sometimes could be challenging, especially in our environment. You are working with a junior colleague that is collecting data for you, and paper has to come. Then you are wondering which position should we put this person that actually wrote this paper. And you want to be a professor and you need first authors in this particular environment. Then that becomes a lot of challenge. Next slide. Working with industry has its own kettle of fish entirely. It's different setting entirely. And one of it is that most industries that are willing to work with you will not want to take the blame. And because of that, they will make you to sign memorandum of understanding. They will not want to take the liability of the research, but they want to take the credit of the research. And that sometimes could be a challenge working with industry. And the reason is obvious. If there's a problem in investigator-led research, the way it will be handled in the law court is different from when an industry, especially an international industry, is leading a research. They will see them as if they want to make profits, and they are not bothering about the people. But you are trying to develop research that will help your people, and that's why they try to protect themselves. And some of the protection could implicate you if you are not very careful. Next slide, please. There are skill sets that you need to be able to go into collaboration. I always say, as a collaborator, you must be ready to listen, you must learn to communicate very well, and you must be a team builder. You must develop an interpersonal skill. There's a lot of story I can tell, but for time. But you must understand, most importantly, what is the strength of the people that you are working with, and what are their weaknesses, what are their needs, and what are their problems. So all that has to be understood. I always tell my research partner, I'm taking advantage of your strength, forgetting your weakness, so that I can use that to work, to strengthen my other area of weakness. Leadership skill is very, very key. You must be able to manage the project, and you must be able to administer human being and also administer resources. So effective leadership is very important if you must have a successful collaboration. And what a leader should do is what I've highlighted, but I won't waste time on that. Next slide. Next. Just to mention that as a leader, you must be flexible. You cannot afford to be rigid. When people have problems, you must be passionate to listen to them. You can't focus more on your research alone without looking at human being. You are not dealing with research animal. That is the difference between the basic scientists that are working with rats and we clinicians that are working in the research field. Why many collaboration doesn't work? And I want to encourage us to listen to this. The reason why many research collaboration doesn't work is because many focus primarily on the output rather than friendship and mutual trust. If you are doing a research because you just want to publish paper so that I can get my promotion, such research will never last very long. When the focus is what is the need for me, yes, you need to have something. But if the primary focus is that what is the need for me in terms of monetary gain and other things, that research collaboration will not. Because if that monetary gain is not coming as you expect, you lose interest, and that will cause the demise of the research collaboration. But more importantly, paying attention to some details. Please, as a researcher, if you are collaborating with an institution, make sure that you are not just doing it as one person with other institutions. Make it your institution and the other institution. And sign an undertaking between your institution and that institution. That helps you to decide what is your whole role, what is the role of the group, and what is the role of others in the partnership. One other thing is that you must sign memorandum of understanding, a material transfer agreement, data transfer agreement. If you don't sign data transfer agreement before sharing your data, don't be surprised to see the PhD of the person you share your, PhD student of the person you share your data with, presenting your data in a meeting, international meeting, and they publish that, and you'll be wondering, but this is our data. So there must be attention to detail. Next slide. And there are processes that must be looked into when you are signing your data transfer agreement or material transfer agreement. It's not to make you look equal, but actually you are a partner, you are equal. But you need to clarify right from the beginning, how do we handle authorship? In my setting now, I have my junior colleague writing paper with us, and a junior colleague from US writing paper. And the question is that who is the first author? Who is going to be the first author? And the next thing is, as a senior researcher, I should be the senior author. And the junior colleague over there also have a senior author that is also interested in taking the senior authorship role. But these days, that has been resolved. You could have joint first author, and you could have joint last author. And that has helped to take care of most of the issues that happen. But everything needs to be spelled out right from the beginning. Who owns the data? Who owns the data? Who owns the sample? And the derivative from the samples. Right from the beginning, all this has to be trashed out. Let me tell you, if you are working with international partners, they will tell you you are the owner of the samples, but they are the owner of the derivative. I always ask them, if I don't give you my sample, where do you get the derivatives? So there must be a midway between both of us, and that has been our benchmark in doing research with others. Anytime there's doing research, you are doing a research, you must not be too eager that, oh, everything you have, I must have. Do you have electricity to back it up? Do you have infrastructure to cope with some of those equipment that they have? I just got an equipment that can run automated immunohistochemistry and IHD in situ hybridization in Ife, and it has taken me almost 6 months to get it installed. So if I insist all the type of machine they have at MSKCC, I must have, you can believe that they will fill up my junk here because we will not be able to install. So you must be realistic in the technology that you want them to transfer. And when they are transferred, make sure that you can equal that with whatever resources you have. Don't cheat your institution while signing material transfer agreement and others. Compensation for indirect costs of your institution is very key. I won't bother about what you should do when negotiating contracts. Let's go. Why do you ask, what you should ask yourself before having a collaboration? And the most important thing is that, do I have time for it? Please, if you don't have time for collaboration, don't waste their time, because they will soon realize that you are not a good collaborator. And believe you me, they will tell others that that guy is not a good person to work with. And you don't know how much people will talk about you outside this environment when they notice that you are not realistic. So when you are going into a collaboration, please look for time and give time to the project. Next slide. Where do we get collaborator? I said, this is a network. Look inward. Where your network? Network of friends. We all graduate from medical school, and you have people in your whole field from your medical school. They are your potential collaborator. Arcon can be a network for you where you can select few people. But more importantly, visiting academics. In a meeting like this, we started ERCP in Ife. After I spent about a decade to start the program without success, I was in a SOGI meeting and a lady came and he said, oh, she just graduated, these are the interests, and our interests match each other. Of course, I invited her to Ife, and the rest is the story. So visiting academic, your mentor contact can be a source of where you can get collaborator. Most people that knows about Hago would not know the story. How did Hago started? We started because I saw a paper in a journal where Professor Brenner, I will show you a picture very shortly, who wrote a review, and I wrote a letter to him. I'm interested in this aspect, and that's how African Research Group for Oncology started. Checking relevant journals, you must have access to at least the abstracts of relevant journals in your field, because it helps you to develop ideas on new research and develop collaborators. Their emails are always there, which you can get free of charge. Conference programs, social media, editorial board of relevant journals who are reviewing papers along your field can be potential source of collaborator. You must be aware of people that have synergistic area of research to you. As a researcher, I need a bioscientist, I need a statistician, and I need a group of people that need to help me. I can see her standing up, so I need to move very fast. Regional experts, follow the money, I said, meaning that anybody that is successful in applying for a grant is a potential collaborator to you, attending conferences and boot camp, making yourself visible by publishing. Please don't neglect the day of little beginning. Your retrospective paper is also important. That's how people know that you have interest in those areas and can attract them to you. Next slide. Factors to consider when choosing collaborator. Just know that collaboration is like dating. And that's where we have women better than us men. It's like dating. A woman will not date any man that they don't like. So if you want to have collaborator, it's like dating. You must choose person with good research quality, good professional quality, good personal quality, and good social quality, because collaboration is almost like friendship. Next slide. And there is process in determining research partnership. Actually start from adequate preparation to process and impact, which I won't waste time on. Next slide. Next slide. So the key thing we need to know if we are having lasting collaboration is that the collaboration should be based on strong mutual interest. of both parties. I am always worried when I see somebody bringing already designed protocol and dumping it on your table and said, okay, can we work on this? That will not last. You must be part of whatever you are designing. The interest must match, and you should be part of whatever that is written right from the beginning. Openness and transparency must be right from the beginning. Next slide. You must discuss the budget. You must discuss everything. What is the role? If a member of the other team is going to derive PhD from your work, it should be stated. If you have somebody, not at the end of the day that you should be knowing that, oh, somebody is actually, you are supplying data and somebody is doing a PhD on the work and is taking the glory from the, so there must be transparency right from the beginning. Next slide. Next slide. Let's go on. So what's the role of association like this in fostering collaboration? Arcon has a role. West Africa College of Surgery has a role. Our respective institutions have a role. And most importantly, now I told somebody that this is radiation and clinical oncology. Where is the surgical oncology group? Where is the gynae oncology group? Where is the pediatrics oncology group? There must be a forum or a fora where all of us network and decide the fate of cancer management in Nigeria. I believe that's where Nigeria Institute for Cancer Research and Treatment comes to play. So everybody has a role. Criteria to assess research collaboration, effective leadership, competence, and involvement in cutting-edge, interesting science. Next slide. Where do you get funding for your collaboration? Sometimes you can start from zero and it can actually work out very well. Use existing resources. Rather than building another, getting a dedicated building, you can use your building that you have to do the, to start the collaboration, apply for multiple grants, and involving industry in whatever you are doing. Unfortunately, if you see sub-Saharan Africa, there is no collaborative grant. But we are taking advantage of those other countries that have collaborative grants, and those things are becoming more accessible to us these days, which we can apply for. Next slide. Let me round this up by talking about African Research Group for Oncology, just few slides. I started, before that, I started with, no, come back, just a minute, I must tell the story. I was in MSKCC when, to visit Professor Brenner in yellow with a black suit. And during that visit, Peter Kingham was a fellow with him. And he brought the two of us together. And we established African Research Group for Oncology that started with about few people and had grown. I can tell number of the people in the audience are also members of African Research Group for Oncology. But more importantly, what we focus is matching interest. Somebody from North America and somebody from Nigeria or from Sub-Saharan Africa. So we've been able to build interest in colorectal, we've been able to build interest in breast. In radiation oncology, we'll be able to build interest, build up people together. In radiology, we've been able to match people together. And now we are currently starting work along genetic study, and we are building people together. Next slide. Pathology, we've been able to match people. We've done same in nursing, and we've done same in chemosave, in pharmacy. So all this, what we do is to try and match people, two champions from this side and the other side, doing research and applying for grants. So these are structured. We have a board, and we have 3 managers, a training manager, a project manager, and a research manager. And we have over 40 research assistants. Next slide. These are some of the studies that we are doing in colorectal. Most of them are ongoing. Next slide. Breast cancer seems to be growing on a daily basis. Some are still not there. So we have a number of training programs that some of us have participated in, and we have an echo program. Next slide. She has moved from her seat to the front, telling me you must run. What's the secret to our success? We peer based on mutual interest. we are committed to mutual development and academic growth. Not only your own growth, also their own growth. Everybody wants to grow. So we are interested in both parties, and we understand this, the scenario that each individual operates in. There's transparency in the management of funds. Everything is transparent. There's good communication system, and everybody, both on the other side and this side, we are willing to learn at all times. So let me conclude by saying research collaboration is a process, not an event. It takes a lot from individual to ensure it is rewarding. Most of us are interested in the reward, not the work. So it takes a lot of work to make it rewarding. It is possible to start one, but it is better to start small and grow it. A number of research collaborations are available in Nigeria. Please join one if you have not started. Next, I want to thank all our funders and my friend, Dr. Peter Kingham, and all the people in the house that have been partnering with us. We cannot do it without you. So thank you, thank you, thank you. Next slide. I just want to, it remains one. Yes, I want to invite you to our meeting that is holding in 2 weeks' time. So you are invited. God bless you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prof. Alatishe. I think we are ready now for the next presentation. What we will do is that we are going to take the questions after Professor Wong's presentation. So if you have, so please hold your questions and your comments for Prof. Alatishe. So Professor Wong, you have the floor.
Good morning, good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be here. I want to thank the organizing committee and in particular Dr. Lacey Beacon for giving me the opportunity to be here. My topic is CRMP, which is short for Clinical Research Mentorship Program, the acronym we started off with and continued with, and I'll tell you more about this project. Yeah. See, here's my disclosures. Next slide. The outline of my talk is, first we want to talk about why we want to focus on doing mentorship as a role of increasing research capacity. Why and how. But most of the time I want to talk about the rationale behind the design of the Clinical Research Mentorship Program that is focused on oncology trainees and lessons that we have learned. A word on future directions, and finally a few take-home messages. What is the issue? Inequities in health research contribute to inequities of health. Teaching research skills is key to ensure the future generations, physicians, or healthcare professionals are capable of asking the right questions and innovate for the future. We don't all have to be career scientists, but we need to be able to ask questions in our clinical practice to evaluate quality and to adapt to change, and to come up with innovative ideas. Improvement in clinical research capacity equals improved patient outcomes, and cultivating research skills is an essential component for all oncology research training programs. I really like this paper that is written by a few top academics. It is entitled, "Why do we need to focus on oncology trainees? We reap what we sow." The premise of the paper is that oncology trainees are among the best and the brightest, and cancer care is better if we challenge the standard of care. Oncology trainees are inspired to do research, that's why most of them join this phase, and supporting them early to keep the fire burning is where we need to be, so they can grow into doing big-time research that we've all been hearing about. In this paper, they provided a number of suggestions throughout the individual's career but most importantly, connect them with the mentors. Next slide. Mentoring our trainees require resources. We require personnel, infrastructure, expertise, and I can only imagine all the challenges with, in the developing world where you're short of resources and lots of patience and demands on your time. Sharing resources through international collaborations is one way of improving the capacity. Next slide. Having international collaboration not only improve capacity, but actually improve the quality of mentoring. For the mentors, it helps broaden perspectives for our mentees, and also bring in the quality and the type of expertise that may be rare for your mentee into the research group. For the mentees, it also increased the opportunity for them to build their peer network and support each other as they launch into their career going forward. The concept is not particularly new. There are lots of attempts and well-established efforts to bring mentors and mentees together. Most of them are done through international professional societies. There are plans that actually just put people together so that organically the mentoring happens. There are also funding sources that you can apply to spend time at institutions. But focusing about research, probably the exemplary model is the one-week intensive research methods training that's been exemplified by the FAO group and subsequently the ACR and ASCO. And more recently, a similar model was implemented based at Tata Memorial Credo. Next slide. They've written on the impact of models like this, and on the left is a paper that describes an 18-year experience from ACR, ASCO, and on the right, a more recent Credo. What we can see in these established, very well sought after models is that they tend to target the faculty, early career faculty and fellows. And the admission rate is about 50% and 40% in the Credo group. Whilst they all showed very impressive metrics in improving the productivity of those who participated, in the left you can see that over time there's a drop in the publication. So the sustainability of this effort that is put in over 1 week do wane over time. And on the right, it also documented that about 60% of the projects that was discussed never get launched for a number of practical reasons. So the question is that, can we reach trainees earlier and so that it can be more equitable, so that whoever is interested will have the opportunity to be mentored, and strategies to improve sustainability. Next slide. So a few years ago, we saw, actually quite motivated by Dr. Joyarni and Dr. Vanderpoy when I had the opportunity to visit Ghana, we came up with a hypothesis. Can a formalized structure to create a mentorship triad between supervisor, trainee in the low and middle income country and mentors in a high income country can come together and work with the trainee and then enable clinical research capacity building. We expect it to work through multi-directional benefits for all who are involved, and growing the culture through our trainees and this triad will contribute to a sustainability and growth of this capacity building is the vision. Next slide. The core design of our program is very similar to what you would do with your residents in your in-house program. We start off with a research question that they're interested in answering, and we give them a 12-week methods course, during which time we expect them to develop the protocol so that it's ready for ethics submission. Following that, over the course of the year, the triad worked together both for informal meetings as well as formal touch points, ending with a completed data set that is ready for conference submission and presenting at a conference. We also secure funding. Essentially, all of them went towards stipend to allow the trainee to present and work at conferences. We also had a, next slide. Next. Yeah. We also had a proactive, well-designed evaluation plan at the very beginning. Through surveys, qualitative studies, as well as focus groups and mixed methods methodology, we want to find out what are the enablers and barriers to implementing this type of program in different settings for different groups of learners. Within this program, we also have a developmental framework. What we wanted to do is not provide the same course for everyone, but with each course that we deliver, each year of cohort that we deliver this program, learn something and improve the program so that we can be more effective and efficient. Next slide. So our journey since 2016, we started with Ghana, Kolebu, one center. Then they introduced us to Zimbabwe, another center. And then through Dr. Lisa Beacon, she encouraged us to expand it to the whole country of Nigeria. And we were able to get residents from each of the training centers to participate. And through that experience, this year, we expanded it to aortic, able to reach 5 countries and 7 residents who participated in this current cohort. In the Nigerian cohort, we also expanded the mentors with collaboration and support from Dr. Jingren with MD Anderson. Here are some of the lessons that we have learned. Go back one slide. We did short-term evaluations of the surveys, and represented in blue and red here, you see the trainees are quite satisfied with the experience during the teaching sessions. Next slide. And here are some of the academic productivity. Basically, in summary, all of the trainees, majority of them were able to complete their project and present their work at an international conference, and subsequently taking them to manuscript publication. In a less quantitative way, we're following them longitudinally. We have found that our fellows, our alumni, have been quite successful at securing additional grants, writing papers that are impactful, representing African and the local environment, and also receiving merit awards, for example, from Arcon and other jurisdictions. Next slide. We also conducted a qualitative study. We surveyed as well as do focus groups on mentees, supervisors, and mentors, and asked them, what did you learn and how can we improve? All of them endorsed that it enhanced their research skills, but more importantly, the culture and passion for clinical research as a career. They also tell us that because of that experience, they know what is a good mentoring experience and want to give back to the next generation. From my end, I find that it was a very effective mechanism to allow our colleagues, faculty, who perhaps is not as well positioned to collaborate with international global collaborators, but through the mechanisms that have been set up, they are there, right there, to help mentor our trainees. They also give us some suggestions for improvement. They've told us that being the only resident being selected from their center is a little lonely, and having a team is helpful. And they also suggested that we should have some structured efforts to grow the mentorship quality and mentoring skills. And finally, they also mentioned that sustainability after they completed the program is something that we should think about. Next slide. Through the collaboration with Arcon, it is summary here of some of the accomplishments with 2 of your trainees, Dr. Adayinka and Dr. Chigbo, being accepted at a Canadian conference. Dr. Chigbo actually traveled to us. We were able to listen to her presentation and also show her our center, and all the manuscripts are currently in preparation. The research awards that I gained, go back for a minute, and also, can you go back for a minute? Go back one slide. Go back one slide. Yes. But one of the important things that you did for us is that we implemented the mentoring best practice sessions. Here we borrowed an evidence-based tool and implemented it to improve the discussion about what is a good mentoring experience. Next slide. Next slide. So a word about the future. We anticipate that we want to build in transition to independent practice and research. And some of the thoughts are grant writing workshops, seek grants so they can practice writing. And we started inviting our alumni to come back as junior mentors to give back to and practice their mentoring skills. Next slide. I put in this slide to remind ourselves that mentoring and training is not alone, but an important step. But together and a systematic approach to some of these named challenges of barriers towards research can perhaps be solved through good, strong international collaboration. Next slide. Next slide. So my take-home message to you is that building a mentorship program in research has many tangible benefits. The design of the mentorship program matters for quality and sustainability. And a proactive evaluation program, to me, is a foundation for iterative refinement and improvement. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for keeping to time. Thank you so much. So I think we can have the questions and answers now. Please keep your questions and comments short. So I think this has been very interesting, this session. I think what we all should take away is that data is gold, collaboration is key, mentorship is important, commitment, leadership will get you there, and quality research is possible. So do we have any questions and comments? Please keep it brief. All right, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wong. This was a really fantastic model, and I want to commend you and Anuja on all the progress you've made on the mentoring program. It's incredible. My only question or comment is, are you thinking about working with other professional societies? Because every professional society out of the US now has an international committee, and they're lacking tangible projects, in my view, that could be potentially impactful, mostly because these professional societies, the international committees, are not well funded, right? But they're eager participants who want to contribute. So could this be a model, say, for example, for ASTRO International Committee for the Education Group, right, to be able to then provide 1 or 2 mentors that can sort of help support this program and expand and scale it? And similarly, IGCS. So IGCS right now is thinking about building the, in addition to the Gyn-Onc training program fellowship they have, they're actually thinking, like, expanding into radiation oncology and building a radiation oncology training program for cervical cancer. And within that, there's a strong component for research training. So how do we sort of use the different resources to make most impact?
So I think, you know, the question is actually for both speakers. So Professor Wong, you can go first, then Professor Laetitia.
Okay, I completely agree with you. I think the model for me, mentorship is expensive, mentorship is cheap. We only need the framework and need somebody to oversee it and move it forward. And I think that, and that's what I meant by getting my faculty who is interested to participate. And I welcome the opportunity to make it happen in broader settings so that more people can participate. So I agree with you.
When we started ARGO, our primary aim is to have multiple disciplines in each of the centers we work with. A radiologist at least, a surgeon that is interested in cancer, a pathologist that is interested in cancer that we are talking about, radiation oncologist and clinical oncologist. And that's how we have designed whatever, because we believe if you have everybody in their house taking the decision together, not only about the management of the patient, but also about the research we are doing, our research will be more productive. And that has been spread. We are working with Bison, we are working with which is breast radiation oncology, and other associations that are interested in research in cancer. Thank you.
So do we have more questions for the speakers? Any comments? Okay, so I think it's a wrap. So thank you so much to the speakers. Thank you so much. So the next presenter should please get ready. If you have your presentations, could you please submit it to our IT team? So, Dr. Jimo, we are inviting you to moderate the next session.
Good morning.